Thank you. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Here.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Here. Mr. Swager?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas? Here.
Reading of the news.
This is a public meeting of the Board of Education for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There's a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes. Upon request to the superintendent, the district shall make reasonable accommodation for a person with a disability to be able to participate in this activity. A recording shall be made of each meeting of the board as an administrative aid and shall be preserved as public documents of the board.
Thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I have one change to the agenda. If you look under consent agenda, item D, unpaid days. And there's a table there, the first name Kendra Arbogast. I want to change in the dates that are there. So you'll see it says March 1st to March 22nd. We're going to change that. It'll stay March 1st, but then it'll go to March 18th. And then the total number of days are 12, not 16. And then the only other thing I want to call the board's attention to is we did update the minutes from what we shared with you late on Friday. So there's some updated board minutes there. But other than that, everything is the same as was published in the agenda.
Thank you. If I can get a motion for the adoption.
I'll make the motion.
Can I get a second?
A second.
Any discussion? Call the roll. Oh, do you have a discussion on the agenda?
I was just going to say regarding minutes, I read those too, and I appreciate your change.
It was my counterpart here doing a lot of the work. So we worked on that together. But yeah, we
And in a global sense, it doesn't limit us to certain discussions. It helps us with our ideas without any changes. So I appreciate it.
and we have a work session next week, believe it or not. So some of these topics we can continue. If that makes sense in a work session because of spring break, we have only a week between meetings.
Woohoo.
Well, they're near spring break. So
All right.
I tried to entice you with that.
Excited about spring break.
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
they need to get a little more time off. How's that?
Can we call the roll, please?
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Any public remarks?
No, we don't have to. Derek already checked.
Oh, you checked, okay.
So thank you. Yeah, she's not here today. So
All right, on to presentations.
our first presentation is an exciting one. So I want to recognize Abigail Atkins and talk a little bit about her. And then her coaches are going to come up and then we'll further recognize her. And I think, Mr. Swager, you have a certificate to hand at the end, correct? So talk about Abigail. She is being honored as a student athlete who stands out among others. Abigail is a hard worker, passionate player, and has been a leader all 4 years on the Johnstown High School girls basketball team. She takes her academics very seriously. She currently has a cumulative high school grade point average of 3.2 and is also taking multiple college classes. She also battled through a significant knee injury that held her out of the first half of her junior season and came back better than ever. So I'm going to read you a long list of accolades, and there's quite a bit here, so I'll go through them. LCL Cardinal First Team 4 times. LCL Cardinal Player of the Year 3 times. District 11 First Team 4 times. District 11 Player of the Year 1 time. Central District D3 First Team 4 times. Dispatch All Metro Team Honorable Mention 2 times. Dispatch All Metro Team Second Team 1 time. Newark Advocate Second Team 1 time. Newark Advocate First Team 3 times. All Ohio Special Mention 2 times. All Ohio Third Team 1 time. And we're still waiting for awards this year, so there's more to come. This is what has been done in the past. And then Sorry, I'm battling this cold. In terms of career points, 1,392, which puts her third all-time for Johnstown girls basketball. Career made three-point shots, 142, which puts her first all-time on Johnstown girls basketball. So we'd like to bring her coaches, Scott Helmke and Deb Merrill, to the podium, and they're going to talk further about Abigail.
Hold on one second, Scott.
You got to
And
repeat
make
that,
sure you're
Scott.
in the mic. It's just so people at home can hear you.
I didn't
They
hear
can't
that
hear
at
you.
home, Scott. You got to repeat
I
that.
just the first thing I'd say is I think Abigail, it sounds like she's had great coaching for 4 years. So the first time we met Abby, we were at JES, and we were doing some workouts for younger girls. And Deb and I are standing in the middle of the floor, and I'm looking away from the door, and Deb's looking towards the door, and we're talking about stuff. And I'm facing this way, and she's facing this way, and she says, "Who's this girl that walked in?" Well, I didn't turn around, and a couple seconds later, Deb goes, "We got a baller." And I'm like, "What?" And I turn around, and she's like, "This girl is down there shooting reverse layups," which most of our girls probably didn't know what a reverse layup was, let alone could shoot them. So we found out. I called her over. I'm like, "Who are you? And where'd you come from?" And she's like, "Well, I'm from Centerburg, and I'll be an 8th grader." So one of my good friends was the girls' varsity coach at Centerburg. And I got home that night and called him, and he answered the phone and said, "You're welcome." So Abby's 8th grade year was her first year here. She broke her foot, I think, halfway through the season. And then we got her in high school. And, I talked about this. We got beat a couple weeks ago in the district semifinal. But of all those accolades, excuse me, and everything that Abby has done, the one thing that stands out to me the most is how unselfish she is. And it starts with her parents sitting here, who anytime I've talked to them about Abby, they bring up another player. They bring up somebody else. They bring up the team. They bring up everything positive about everybody else, including Abby, but they want to recognize everyone. And everything that Abby's done for this program, based on her points and her accolades and everything, all the awards that she's won, she's the most unselfish player that I've ever been around. And one of the other thing I would say this year that I was so proud of her, we were so proud of her, was her leadership. We talked about it last year at the end of the season that she really needs to grow as a leader. And she's not a person that is going to, be in the locker room and screaming at girls and getting them to do things that way. But watching her throughout this season, she really took the younger girls, I think, under her wing, and they followed her. And she led by example, which she pretty much did her entire career. But she led by example. She led by work ethic. She led by, being respectful on the floor, respectful to her opponents, respectful to her teammates, respectful to the referees. And to me, that was one of the biggest, proudest things I think that of her that I had this year was just how she grew as a person. So she's been a tremendous asset to our program. It's going to be tough not having her around, but we're excited to see her grow in the future and where she goes beyond high school. But Abby, David, Sarah, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's been a great ride, and thank you.
say anything or? Yes. Yes.
I mean, with everything said and all the wars it's won, I think the most important thing to stand out is 3 of them here, but I have awesome teammates, and without them, nothing can happen. Awesome coaches, amazing parents. So I think without that, I mean, it could never happen the way it did. Yeah, just thank you. Thank you guys for making Johnstown basketball thing, obviously, and everyone that put into it. But no, thank you. It's all teammates, coaches, people that we don't see at school, parents. But no, thank you for everything, Brickner. Thank you. I mean, it was fun. So thank you.
Good. Abby, we have a certificate. Mr. Swager, on behalf of the Board of Education, will give you a certificate.
Any comments? I went to quite a few of the girls' games, and it was always a great time to watch you all the team play. Obviously, Abby, you've been a prolific scorer for all 4 years, but you definitely, Scott mentioned you could see the leadership change, and you could see the rest of the team follow you. You could see your leadership, and everyone geared that team. Everyone knows you're going to shoot the ball. Everybody knows you're going to get the ball. Everyone knows you're going to score points because that's the player you are. But your defense, everything else that you did is what shows that your leadership. It's not just scoring. Everyone likes to shoot the ball, right? I mean, everyone that plays basketball, you play basketball on Sundays with me. I shoot like crazy. I'm not very good, but I like to shoot. The difference is, well, you make yours, but I don't. But your leadership and the defense that you play and just being able to hustle. The amount of times I saw you diving after balls and going after it and not getting frustrated, though, the emotional leadership that you showed when you guys weren't doing everything right, when things weren't going great for the team, you didn't panic. You always had that calmness that you brought to the game. And I think that, to me, kind of showed your last 2 years here, especially watching you play, is just you had a calmness to you. When the game was close and tight, you didn't mind getting the ball. You wanted the ball. You know, where a lot of players don't want to see that. You know, they get a little nervous, don't want to touch the basketball. You wanted the ball. And that just showed a leadership that I enjoyed watching the last 4 years. You made your 1,000th point on a free throw, which was fitting. But it was a lot of fun watching the whole girls program. Scott and Deb, you guys have been doing great over there. I think you've got a lot of talent coming through. And a lot of that is girls like you and, you know, the whole team. The younger girls watching you play, having fun, getting people involved, and then them coming and seeing that. That's what builds the program. So players like you are what builds the program too. So not only is it your success this year, it's the success that you're bringing to the program. And I think, you know, we've honored the 7th and 8th grade team. So obviously we see a lot of success coming for them as well. So Scott and Deb, you know, you got to stick around for at least 5, 6, 7 more years now. So got too much talent coming through. Amy already got her 2-hour early release. What more do you want? All right, no. But anyways, I do appreciate it. It was great career. A lot of fun watching it. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Still can. All right. Because, hey, once you win once, you quit playing. All right. No, thanks again. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Peyton wants to stay with us.
All right. Well, now that the crowd left, move on. See, she draws people even to a board meeting.
It's amazing.
No, yeah, she was. I mean, really phenomenal player. If you watched her much this year, I mean, it was a different level player. So it's great to watch. Moving on.
Next, we have the Greater Johnstown Parks and Rec District. Not really so much of a presentation as it is a discussion among the board looking for some direction. So I gave you a copy of the bylaws from the Greater Johnstown Parks and Rec District. A couple things to think about. The composition of the board consists of the following. There are 5 trustees, 2 of whom are appointed by City Council, 2 of whom are appointed by the Johnstown-Monroe Local School District Board, and then the final trustee is elected by appointed members of the board. So we have those 4 people. And we have 1 position open now and soon to be a second position. So looking for some direction from the board, and I know the city is as well too. So if we can engage in some dialogue around this and help the administration get some direction, I'll be happy to work with the city as well.
In my proposal here is that we know we have 1 vacancy with the second one coming up at the end of the current member's term. So I'd like to just go ahead and post for both positions. There's no point in posting for one, waiting 3 months from now, to post for a second one. If we just post them both now, we can choose, get the candidates in. We can certainly select one, and then the second one would be contingent on the term of the current member's term, and then we can appoint then. I just want to make sure the board's on the same page as far as posting those and starting interview process and moving forward with this.
Are we going to discuss the bylaws at any time?
I think after we get our 2 members on the board, then we'll have a quorum that we can actually discuss it with. But the current state is we've got 4 members, and we'd like to get back to 5 with our 2 new appointees to get to that point. Anyone else has any questions, comments? I think that's the right time to
I think
do
by
it.
the time you get done with getting the resumes in and then going through and doing the interviews, you'll be needing to put the next one on.
Right.
So it's best just to do it all at once. Time saver.
I've already worked with the city, and I have their posting information since they just recently filled the position. So I'll use that, and I'll keep the board updated, and then keep it up for a couple weeks, you think?
Yeah.
2
Yeah, I
weeks or
think
so,
so,
and we'll
2
see
weeks.
how it goes. We'll try, Mr. McDonald's not here today, but we'll make sure to publicize it well, put it on our social media, put it on our website, and I'll keep the board updated, and then we can go through the typical process that we would for almost like an employment. So we'll screen, and then we'll get into interviews.
I'd say for the public out there, if you're interested in this, it'll get posted maybe as soon as tomorrow or the next day. Within the
Definitely by
next few
Wednesday,
days.
let me see, we got
Yeah.
a few people out.
Within the next few days, it'll get
Yeah.
posted. So if you're interested in being a member of the Greater Johnstown Parks and Recreation District, current members are Mike Giannini, Daryl Warnett, and Nicole Shook. Is that correct? With Mike and Nicole being the 2 City of Johnstown representative, Daryl being the jointly recommended person, and then you have Keith Ryan, his term will end in August, so that'll be, and then we have a vacancy. So we'll be filling the vacancy first and interviewing for the vacancy that will be created when Keith's term ends. So if you have interest in this position, certainly apply, and we're looking forward to getting 2 qualified folks to help fill out that board.
Good. That's all we have for presentations.
Moving on to the board committees.
Yeah, we only had 1 committee meet since our last board meeting, so that would be policy, and that committee met on March the 12th.
That's tomorrow.
That would be right.
Give us
We're
an
meeting
update.
tomorrow.
Can you give us a
No.
update?
Yeah, sorry.
I think the most recent conversations were from our work session, and we haven't had any. We're just level setting, then nothing new.
It's fine. Oh,
She was just like,
Oh.
She was just being.
Anything else on the board committees? Obviously, we have
no,
upcoming
the only
meetings.
thing, speaking of committees, I do want to, we were talking about scheduling. We're trying to compress the schedule so we can do multiple committees a day to make it easier on board and scheduling. Our next committee structure meetings we're looking at is in April 3rd. So potentially we would have finance at 1 p.m., technology at 2, and curriculum committee at 3. So after the meeting, if I can grab Mr. Benton, Mrs. Boer, Mrs. Davis, Mrs. Thomas, and then all of you have different roles on there, and I'll check your schedule. I think some of you have replied already, but I just want to make sure that we have everything confirmed. Okay. And then we'll get that finalized, Mr. Schwager, for the next meeting.
So great. Moving on to consent.
Okay, consent agenda. Oh, let me do LPDC real quick. So, yeah, we got an update on that. Sorry. No. We didn't have a meeting last time, so this is the most current one. So LPDC met, and they met on February the 22nd. Those present were Stephanie Stuckey, Renee Britton, Annette Price, Ben Jagger, Angel King, and Derek Busenberg. The committee was through their normal structure of processes, so they have individual professional development plans, and they approved 2 of those for staff. They have 3 license renewals, so they approved all 3 of those. They did not have any approved contact hours for staff, so that didn't come up at this last meeting. And then teachers leaving the Johnstown School District and then exiting the local professional development committee, there was none there. The only thing that, one other item, I guess, of note, and this is just a state software issue that I'll work on, but the state is still pointing to some of the old schools, so it's still showing Oregon in there over on the north property, so I'll check with them. There's a process we have to submit, and then the state has to approve it. We did some of that weeks ago, but I haven't seen the approval come through, so the LPDC is asking about that, so I will follow up on that. But other than that, that's what the committee did on the 22nd of February. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Lori Clark's name's spelled wrong. Her
Okay.
first name.
Okay. Is there a U missing? Is that what it is?
I believe so.
Okay. I'll check with the team on that. Those are
I looked
their
at the
official notes.
directory, and that's what it. I think it's just the U. I
Okay.
looked at the directory.
It looks like that when you spell Lori, but I'll check with the team so they can correct their minutes. Thank you. And that's all we have for LPDC. Ready for consent? Okay. So resolution 24-03-043 is approval of the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
I'm going to run through these real quick. Okay, as I mentioned, there's been some updates to some revisions to the board minutes, so you should seen those by now. Next, we have the approval of monthly finance reports, and the board has had access to those. On unpaid days, I want to call your attention again to Kendra, so it should be March 1st to March 18th for a total of 12 days. We're asking you to approve that and everything else that's stipulated there for the remaining staff. We have resignations, which I'll come back to that in just a second because there's a couple people I want to talk about. We have volunteers. Administrative team continue to do a great job there and get our volunteers in, so we have quite a long list there. And then the one item under volunteers, there's a resolution contained within this consent agenda, and it's to amend a previous resolution. The previous resolution was 23-11-161, and the board had previously approved in November volunteers. And there's one name we want to remove, and that would be Erin Queen Albright. And it's nothing against her, of course, but just keeping with our new processes and procedures we have, we're insisting that all coaches must be aged 21 years or older, and then they must be 3 years removed. They have to hit both criteria in order to be at least a volunteer coach for the school district. I would say that we've had a few people who have also requested, they just weren't approved by the board. So we wanted to make sure to correct this. And then that process is also in keeping with the kind of substitutes we have at the high school. We're also looking to try to make sure that we have older, and if we have those who are more recent graduates, then we have them assigned to the younger grades. It's nothing against anyone, but it's just, too close in age and just recently being in the building. So we think that's clear. So that's consent. And then if you can indulge me for a minute, I wanted to go through and talk about a couple resignations. Of course, we hate to see anyone leave, but I wanted to talk about a couple people in here. Robbie Brickner's name is on the list. Robbie is going to pursue some of his other interests, staying in coaching, getting married this summer, so that's exciting, and maybe moving from the area. So he's going to see us exploring some options there. So it's been the athletic director for 3 years in the league. So we'll post that position relatively soon. Susie Eltrenheim has been with the district 15 years. Let me just see. Yeah, 15 years. So she started at Searfoss Elementary in 2009 as a kindergarten aide. And then halfway through the year, she transitioned to library. Then she moved to the elementary school to work with the K-5 staff when we had all the K-5 staff there in 2020. And then her final position has been at Johnstown Middle School, where she served the students and staff well there. So she has been in the district, like I said, for a total of 15 years. We'll certainly miss her.
And she put up with Mike for all these years.
I'll let you say that.
Might help.
We know.
I hope you're friends. Okay.
Oh, we are. He takes all of our photos.
Well, then that's true.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
he does a terrific.
He's a nice
job.
guy. Yes, he is.
He puts in as much work as any volunteer in this district does.
That is true. Yeah, he's everywhere sometimes. He just pops on Mr. O'Brien does.
We'll miss her.
Oh,
Yes, he
absolutely.
definitely.
The kids will miss her too.
Yeah,
Really like her.
that's a long time. And then last, I want to highlight again, we have a few resignations here, but we're trying to grab the people who have been here for a little longer, had some leadership positions. I want to acknowledge Max Snyderman, who's also resigning at the end of this school year, same as Robbie. And he's been with the district 3 years. Before that, he was at Reynoldsburg, and he was a math teacher, and he's been an assistant middle school principal. He's leaving the district. They have a newborn child this year, and might be moving as well. So I kind of want to get closer to family. So, but he really is thankful for all the opportunities and what we've been able to accomplish together in Johnstown. So, wanted to highlight those people. And again, we recognize everyone there. Just who's resigning, and we certainly need to lose anyone. But even cheerleading there, we'll make sure to post those in the other positions. And Mr. Busenberg gave an update in the Friday report about some of the coaching positions. And that's all we have for consent, unless there's questions I have an answer.
Any questions? Comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes. I did want to make a comment though on Mr. Brickner. I do appreciate everything you've done. You're everywhere as well. You and Mike got a carpool to half of these places because as an athletic director, you attend more events than I've ever seen from any athletic director. I mean, you're home and away. You're everywhere all the time, and we love your brightly colored pants. So. I do appreciate everything you've done. You're easy to get along with. A lot of parents respect you. I have that, so I do appreciate everything you've done here, and enjoy your commitment to Johnstown as well. And Mr. Snyderman, thank you very much. Always got to respect another Red Sox fan. So not a lot of us around here. So I do appreciate everything you've done as well, Max. You brought a steadiness to it. I do hope. For your future there. I know you have the newborn there, and as you and I just talked about a few weeks ago, getting help and being around family is important. And I'm sure you're looking forward to a little bit of that as well. But we do appreciate everything you've done for the district and your steadiness that you've applied here. So thank you very much. Not to overlook the other resignations as well, but obviously I deal with you two quite regularly on topics and issues, so I have a little more direct input into your activities than the others. We certainly appreciate the other folks as well, so thank you very much.
We have a second set of consent. It's not typical, but do you want to read through that? So we have a separate resolution and all for that.
Consent agenda item 2, resolution 24-03-044. We're asking for approval of consent agenda complaints against valuation of real property.
If I can get a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Get a second.
And-
Do we have to read each of these individually? Or
No,
you're gonna go
we
through?
don't
Okay.
have to read them each. I
Yep.
would like to just explain the process a little bit because it's a little different this
It's
year.
new things for our state legislature.
Exactly. So in 22, the Ohio General Assembly passed House Bill 126 that added some extra requirements for boards of education to file a complaint. It is our practice to only file on commercial properties, and the law allows when that change in value from the sale exceeds $500,000 of the current market value and 10%, then we're allowed to ask for that value to be evaluated. We have 12 different commercial properties here that we would like to have you authorize. What this does, it simply allows us to present to the county auditor these sales and ask the county auditor to use their resources, whether that be their county appraisers or we present evidence, the sale usually is good evidence, and it allows the owner to present evidence as to what the value should be. And then the county auditor would assess that new value and determine what that is. The whole purpose of all of this is it protects our major source of revenue is real estate tax, which comes from property valuation. And when these commercial properties are not assessed properly, when we talked about rates and values a month ago, it shifts that tax burden from then that commercial property, if they're undervalued, to residents to pick up whatever is necessary to pay the millage that's been passed. Are there any questions about any of the specific properties?
I mean, in the past, we've done the same thing. We just now have to pass an individual resolution on each property. So that's really the change for us.
The other change that's happened is that this is going to be more of a frequent issue as the community changes and more of a property goes from farms to commercial. You'll see more and more of these resolutions in the future.
Any other questions? We have to call the roll on each of these.
No, it can one.
Consent.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Computer catch up. We'll move on to the treasurers.
Treasurer's Resolution 24-03-045 would be asking you to accept donations. And this donation we had an anonymous donation of $200 toward our 8th grade field trip to DC, and Abercrombie and Fitch donated 75 maple table legs for art and shop.
Odd number. Maybe down at a three-legged table. 75. Could have been 75. All right. All right. Can we get a motion?
I'll motion.
Get a second. Any discussion, comments?
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, whoever anonymous is, and thank you, Abercrombie and Fitch. Yes. Yep. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Okay. Resolution 24-03-046 are additional hours for residency, truancy, and attendance officer.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
So the board had initially allocated some time, and we're close to running that to exhaustion. So we're asking for up to another 5 days at this rate. Only use it if we need it, and things are going well. I've kept most of it confidential, as you know, but I want to make sure anyone who is attending our schools really is legitimately supposed to be here, and we've already exited. I think there's 8 children already who are non-residents from the school district. I think more and more as we go forward, we're going to have to think about, I mean, we always will, but now with growth and looking at buildings and student enrollment and all, I think it's even a greater responsibility.
No, I appreciate this, sir. I mean, it's necessary. We've discussed about this before. We ended open enrollment through 9th grade, and they're going to be 10th, and it's imperative that we allocate resources accordingly. If we don't uphold these, then there is no real reason to have no open enrollment. So it defeats the purpose of it. So that's all I've got on it. Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Resolution 24-3-047 is a memorandum of understanding.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Can we get a second?
Second.
This is an MOU that's been led by the city, and we've been working closely with them. And what this would do is explore the option of a consortium for water and sewer services, and it's being called JAG is the acronym, but it would be a partnership with Johnstown, Granville, and Alexandria. And they're asking for our input in the process, so I've been party to most of the meetings, if not all. And the idea is really looking at how we're moving forward and then how water and sewer services will be provided. I have to say I've been in some of the meetings already, and this is more of a formal step to continue the district's enrollment or involvement in the process. But it's pretty impressive what they're doing and what they're trying to plan for the future. So I appreciate it.
Any questions, comments? I just want to thank, obviously, the city of Johnstown for leading this effort and being involved with us, because the relationship between the school and the city is critical to the success of both. And I know we've developed that and cultivated that relationship as well as they have. And I can't speak more highly of how things are actually working between us and the city right now. And it's imperative to us and our success in controlling growth and recognizing where we can be and what our goals are and the city goals are. And this type of agreement is what leads us to those, because water and sewer and those will determine development and to determine growth. So if we're not at the table, then we're not going to be considered. So I appreciate being invited and involved. Any other questions, comments?
Well said.
Thank you. Call the roll.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Resolution 24-03-048 is a first reading of revised policies.
If I can get a motion,
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
discussion.
Research and publishing. Probably picked that up in error. We're not on the thousands, so check. And also,
Tell me what, I have some notes, but tell me where the board wants to go with. You want to start with 1210 because it's in sequence. Okay.
Start with 1231 on research and publishing. I only have one addition of a couple words on IEP.
Okay.
Which should be materials that are considered for publication and or production, which identifies these are I would like to see shall be reviewed and approved by the superintendent of publication and production.
That's not under the thing that. It's further. in the
It's further.
document.
These are
So-
to come yet, so they're not.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not,
Okay,
we're
fair
not
enough.
on those yet.
It's nice to be in there.
Okay, so
Okay.
I'm just,
But
you
you
know,
did say 12.
it is later. It's 3 or 4 resolutions.
Well, if you don't mind, could you make a note on that 1231?
Yeah.
That way we don't come back to that
We'll
topic.
come back to
Just want to make sure on B that the superintendent approves.
Yeah, it's right here. It's just on F.
Okay.
We're just,
It's under F, item F. Gotcha.
so we're on item 6.
1210.
Board superintendent relationship.
That is.
Okay. 1210. Got it.
Should we discuss 1210?
Sure.
I have a concern about paragraph 3. I know this is not the new policy, it's a current policy, but that paragraph 3, I think it should be the conjunction of the collaboration with board education. So in the past, we've had that collaboration, we can use as we see things good, bad, or ugly, or wonderful, we need to put those for the superintendent to file or before the board discussion, so that when we get to negotiation, we have a community negotiations. That seems a little limited, the way it's written, maybe that was on paragraph 3.
So,
And the
Yeah.
superintendent is not
Okay, so the current policy we have, I'll read this so we're maybe kind of level set. Is that good for the board? Okay. So it says the superintendent as chief executive officer of the school district is the primary professional advisor to the board. He is responsible for the development, supervision, and operation of the school program and facilities. Her methods should be made known to the staff through administrative guidelines of the district. And then the next paragraph, which is the third one, this is under the current policy then, says in order to expedite negotiation procedures, the superintendent is appointed as the chief representative of the board for the purpose of determining negotiation strategies and members of negotiation teams for collective bargaining with recognized union and employee units. So we have a revise to that, and the only revision, and Mr. Kuzberg, jump in if I'm not following this correctly, because I know you're more intimate than I am. So there's an addition where it says the board shall, so this would be the new revision, and you should have it in green if you have it. So the board shall retain oversight supervision of such procedures. So that's between,
That's in the active.
That's the one that's on the file right now.
Yeah, and that's what they're proposing changing it to, is the one.
the board shall retain oversight supervision of such procedures. That precedes the third paragraph. Okay. I'm getting a head nod from Mr. Busenberg, who lives this more intimately. So this will be, it's an interesting balance, right? Because you have to have the board and the superintendent, and things go. Mr. Swager and I have talked about this on a couple occasions because things are going very well, but we want to make sure that you plan for the future. And what if there's some differences, board members, superintendent, the relationship. So that's the change, I believe. Mrs. Davis and Alan Amanda, is that what you remember
That's
from
correct.
policy
Yeah,
committee?
that's
Okay,
what we
good.
got.
Okay. Are we good with?
We're good.
Okay.
Right, Amanda?
Okay. So I think that's everything within section C. But tell me if I'm wrong, and we'll go through them because I have some copies here. I can do some of this, or I can log in and look at some other things.
Anything else? Let's see. I think that was the only one.
Under the job descriptions, I think in the work session, we had the question as a follow-up to that about the certifications, certificates that we have written in there that we have to continue that. So I don't think that was in our,
Okay.
Current curriculum.
Is it the one in the goldenrod there?
1400.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Yeah.
We talked about new certification.
But I think that,
And
I think
having
that
to
came out of
keep-
the work session that we were talking about, that it was a question. You were going to follow up to see if we have that written in the job descriptions.
that a new certification they come in with, they are expected to maintain.
Oh, yes. Yes.
We just want to make sure it's.
We want to
Yeah.
make sure that it's in
somewhere
there.
all of us.
Okay.
Because we can see it there and nobody spoke about it.
Nobody would know.
You understand what we're talking?
Yeah.
Derek, did you hear that? On the employment. What's the title of that one?
Job
This one is
descriptions,
1400
Job
jobs.
descriptions, 1,400. We want to make sure that if we're hiring someone that has a certification, that they understand and it's written somewhere, they have to keep that certification. You can't come in with a certification and then drop the certification, after employment. If it's part of the requirement for hiring. Yeah. Agreed. We're talking
It
like
was just in
HVAC
general,
certification, any of the maintenance staff that has to have a certification, anything, or administrative, anything that we want, I guess, if we have a certification for the position administratively, we want it across all board, all, but this administrative side. Yeah, for those. But we were looking for across all, if you get hired in as part of your hiring, whatever position we create, because just say, I don't know, Dave, Jenny, or, any type of position, if we're requiring a certification, we want to make sure there's some language in there that they're required to maintain whatever certification, so they can't drop that after they've been hired.
So we'll use that same language on administrative classified certified.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's some checks and balances. We can look at adding that. But there's some checks and balances with the treasurer's office. She has to make. We have to do a lot of alignment, but we're actually not allowed to pay people if they're outside of certification, too. So that's part of what we have to do. So if we had somebody who's licensed, I'll say as a school counselor, and they didn't keep up their license, then there's a misalignment with what you always hear is called about EMIS. So we have to align the job responsibilities with the job code with the licensure. There's a licensing dictionary from the state of Ohio that's used in human resources. So there's some check and balance, but we can.
I'm less
We can
concerned
add-
on the teaching staff than I am if we're hiring like maintenance or facility, you know what I mean, that staff, if we're gonna say they have HVAC, welding, whatever we're gonna hire them for, if they have a certification, I wanna make sure they understand they gotta keep that certification and not, if there's continuing education required, whatever, you know, to keep current in that area, we wanna make sure they understand that that's a responsibility as well.
We'll look at that for the
I don't know
non-teaching. Yeah.
administratively what certifications we might want down the road, but we'd like to have that. If we're hiring you in with it, we want to make sure you understand you got to keep it.
Administratively flows from, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, this is just the first reading, so we'll make sure it's added before the.
Yeah. That's a good point. The administration, the history is that the administration flows from the teaching ranks, so there's a lot more control over there, like I said, because there'll be job code alignments, EMIS, licensure dictionary that comes together. But in the non-teaching, you don't have quite as much tied to that. Like you can, like, let's say, for example, have a low boilers license, and you can let that expire, and there's not a tie-in with your state funding with that, with your state reporting. So we'll look at that for second reading. That's going to probably be more in the non-teaching, but we'll look at that. Is there anything else in that section under?
I don't know if this don't have our applications for employment.
We do not have one on nepotism like that, but we're going to look at that after the work session because that's, that I've seen applications before that have that. And then we have we use part of the Power School suite, so we can add that. Yeah. Okay, I'll look into that. And like Mrs. Davis said, this is first reading, so we can look at the options for the second. Okay. Anything else with that section? Okay. So so we have 1130, 1210, and 1400 in that section. Okay. We have notes. Mr. Busenberg's helping me keep good notes, so we'll go through this tomorrow. Okay, good.
Yeah, we have a policy meeting tomorrow.
I don't think there's any controversy on any of those comments. It's just adding in, figuring out where to get them.
Yep.
Yeah,
We'll take notes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you need to vote.
Did we vote on that?
You haven't voted yet.
Call the roll, please.
Wait, did we do it first?
We did. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
motioned.
Yeah, we
Oh,
did.
we did. Okay, sorry.
Amanda was first and
Sorry. I
Alan was
lost my
second.
details there. Sorry.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Okay, resolution 24-03-049 is the first reading to rescind policies.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on rescinding policies?
No, I just really appreciate that you consolidated the harassment policy. It seemed like we just were looking at
Call the roll.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer.
Resolution 24-03-050 is the first reading of replacement policies. And those are for anti-harassment.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion. I think these were pretty standard. Did you guys have anything? Call the roll.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer.
Resolution 24-03-051 is the first reading of new policies.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
And a second.
I'll second it.
Discussion. These are pretty.
This was the research and publishing.
You guys have the note for that on item B on the research and publishing.
Would you repeat your note?
On this one, Right
Also
now,
make sure I have-
currently says materials that are considered for publication and/or production which identify the district in any manner shall be cleared with the superintendent prior to publication.
Mhm.
We thought that should say reviewed and approved. I didn't know what cleared means. You know what I mean? Like, what's the definition of the superintendent cleared it?
Yeah.
We thought reviewed and approved was a little more.
It's
Okay.
I just didn't know what cleared meant. Like, if I gave it to the superintendent, he didn't agree with it, but he cleared it. I don't know. Legally speaking, I usually
Yeah.
see approved or disapproved or reviewed.
We can follow, yeah, that's fair. Mr. Busenberg today met with our regional rep and reviewed some things, so we'll throw that in the mix too and see if we can tighten up that language.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
think
only-
that's
See if that's okay.
clearer.
Yeah.
Meets
So
their
it's cleared
standards.
versus like approved.
Yeah, we thought reviewed and approved or something.
Okay.
I mean, I think cleared is making an assumption, but
Right.
it's an assumption. So,
I didn't know the legal definition of what cleared meant, where I know what approved means.
right.
That's true. We could do authorization.
Authorized was a good one.
Authorized.
Yeah, authorized was a good one too. Yeah, write that one.
That may actually be better because implicit in you would already review that if you're going to authorize it. So.
Means it's been reviewed.
Okay. Okay, we have some things, we have some notes there we can follow up on.
We can call the roll.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes. Board comments? Do you have any board comments? Anything specific?
I was invited to Career Day at the elementary last week, and it was a lot of fun. I don't know that kindergarteners quite conceptualized exactly what it is I do professionally and as a board member, but it was a joy to be a part of.
Excellent. Any other comments? All right, moving on to superintendent comments.
A couple items here. The first one is on policy 5514 on foreign exchange students. I wonder if we could have a bit of a dialogue. I know this is my section report out. But last year, if you recall, we talked about whether we should put a cap or a number of foreign exchange students. Mr. Busenberg's been working with Mrs. King, the principal, and we were talking about what if we kept the limit to 2 students, considering the size of our district and all that we're dealing with. If you talk about residency and growth and all too, and wanted some feedback from the board on that.
I personally think that's fair. We typically had 1, 2, or 3. We don't really have many more than that I can recall in any one year. So I think sticking with 2 and setting a policy that way people that are looking into the program know as well. I would just ask that parents that are thinking of doing exchange actually reach out to the school before they commit to something, knowing that number. That'd be the biggest thing, is getting somebody to reach out before they take, sign up and find out that we're only taking 2. But I do think that's fair. If we're going to limit open enrollment, we're really limiting what we have. We also should watch how many additional students we're taking from any source. Exchange students are always great for our kids to see different cultures and interact. I don't want to say it's 0, but I also don't want to open this up to where we have a bunch of additional students when we're maxing out on some of our classes as it is. So I think, personally, 2 is a fair number.
Okay, so we'll probably look to formalize, not the policy, the guidelines with that, but one way or the other, I do think that's a fair number. Okay, so thank you for that. April 8th, solar eclipse, I believe you saw the letter I sent out last week. So we're going to involve an early release on that. Had some questions from it and just wanted to give you a quick update. Some people are comparing how we're managing our day versus other school districts, and there's a lot of discussion around that. It's whether you're in completely the area of totality, for how long. We're not quite in the totality area, but one of the things that's been asked, and I just want to share with the board publicly, is what about some other schools that have taken off or done something differently? And I wanted to explain there's some nuance with this. It's not always what it seems. Some districts are using a calamity day. Certainly that's the case. Some districts have swap days for winter break, so they took a day or another time. I don't think the spring break, I know for sure they've taken from winter break and they've swapped a day that way, so the student days still total out the same. Some districts are using it, they flip their professional days. So if they had a professional day earlier in the year, the students came to school, and then they moved their teacher and professional development day to April 8th. And then other districts are still on spring break. So when you look at it and you see it's becoming quite the fodder right now, if there's a running list about what districts are doing on April 8th. I just want you to know that, again, it's a nuanced response. So we're going to stay with the April 8th early release, working with our administrative team and then also our families and transportation. So let me know if there's any questions, but that's where we are with that. The RFQ process, request for qualifications, we put post on our website. We had the official launch on Sunday because we released in the newspaper, which is part of a legal requirement. And we've had a few responses already. So I wanted to tell the board that for the architect or design professional, as it's called, we've had 3 responses or 3 requests. So I've sent off the packet to them. And then for the construction manager, we've had 4 requests already. So 3 for architect and 4 for construction manager. And that's just in the first official day since we published in the newspaper yesterday. And then we actually had 1 more for each area because there's a clearinghouse that asked me for copies of both. Just so you know, the process is that we'll keep it open for the prescribed time, and then we'll close it, and then I'll hold a day where I'll invite all of those who have submitted an interest and we've given a packet to come in and meet with some of us, and we'll talk about the potential projects, the 4 aspects of those, and then we'll talk about their submission, and then whomever makes it through that process, then we'll talk about the next step, which is a request for proposal, and that's where the financial implications potentially start to come in. But first, we're going to look at the qualifications. So I want to know if the board has any questions about that. Otherwise, we're moving along as prescribed. Okay. We had a few female wrestlers who did well, and I wanted to highlight wrestling was this past weekend. So we had Cortland Smith. She qualified as an alternate, so at the state level. So that means that if someone takes ill or isn't able to, then she would move, and everyone was healthy above her, so she didn't get an opportunity to compete. But then we had Caitlin Casto, and she actually won her first match on Friday, and then she had 2 more on Saturday and didn't advance there, so no one made it into the top levels of the state. But we certainly, we're very proud of what our wrestling program is.
It's the history, the first girls here, and they've gone to state.
Yeah. No, I think it's impressive. In our wrestling program in general, I see the numbers, and I think what you said before, Mr. Swagger, is true. There's responsibility because when you lead in their success, people see that it builds a culture of success, and people want to be part of a winning team, literally. So I think that's important.
Well, that's hats off to our coaches as well in that wrestling program. I think they're putting a lot of effort in, and they're seeing the results of that. And those 2 young ladies were here actually last couple of board meetings ago.
Yeah.
Representing the wrestling program, so it's great to see their success already. But it will build that program, especially among the girls wrestling, get more involved when they see girls like them succeeding at it, and they're going to participate in it. So hats off to the young ladies, and also hats off to the coaches for being successful, engaging, because wrestling is not an easy sport. So if you want to participate in that, you got to work hard, and those coaches will make you work hard. So you don't get to the states by just showing up. So congratulations to those young ladies and to the whole wrestling program.
We'll see at the next board meeting. Maybe we get them to come. It was such a quick turnaround time because of the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I believe City Council is going to get them in probably before our next meeting. But we'll see about getting them in here to recognize them. We're trying to recognize our state qualifier or state, those who are eligible for state. Always there's some fun parts of the job, and I want to acknowledge that last week we got to surprise Megan York, who's the PE teacher at Johnstown Elementary, and Mrs. Wagner submitted for her, and then she was recognized by the Licking County Foundation as a Leaders for Learning, so she was our school district representative, and we have that highlighted and well-deserved on our social media. So we continue professional partnerships. We have our COSI Day, which is on March 14th, and that's sponsored by Intel. And we will have all of our high school students are invited, so good majority, there's a few staying back, but we're going to host them for a good part of the day. We'll have 11 buses, I believe, that are headed off to COSI and back, and we'll make sure, Mrs. King's done a great job, make sure we're coordinated, so once the buses are in from the morning run, we'll get them loaded for COSI. They'll be back before the afternoon run, so that's 11 buses, but that's exciting, and Intel's sponsoring that for us. And then they always try to keep things local. So they're going to have boxed lunches, and we've been working with the Dashing Diner, and they're providing lunches for over 400 people. So that's quite, yeah, so it's good to keep it local. So a lot of details there. We'll keep you updated. Wanted to remind everyone that the high school musical starts this week. So 15th through 17th is The Little Mermaid. So well received there. We're looking forward to that. Our annual PTO Carnival is coming up, and that's on March 16th, and that's 10:30 to 2:30, and that is indoors, so we'll have that at the high school. I'm reading off my page, so I will correct it.
High school commons, or high school in the commons, in the hallways and the gym and everything.
Yeah.
else. Yeah, at the high school, 10 to 2. Right.
Yeah. I said the high school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, it's got me wondering. I'm reading off the sheets at 10:30 to 2:30, but we'll change it 10 to 2, so that's good. Thank you. And then, as I said, this already reminder work session, is next week, so it'll come quick, but then we'll be able to come. And then one last reminder is if I can talk to those board members afterwards so we can finalize the next round of committees. That'll be on potentially April 3rd, I think you're going to schedule one. And that's all I have, unless there's questions.
Any other questions, comments from the board? I can get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer. Oh, sorry, I should. We got your yes, so. Mr. Swager,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Thank you and good evening.